Hi, folks. So let's talk about the Democrat Party's latest identity crisis, shall we? We're watching a political cult so allergic to order that they've turned border enforcement into a hate crime and national sovereignty into a slur, basically. Democrats have spent years defunding police, sheltering criminals, and crying sanctuary louder than a church bell at midnight until ICE gets funded, that is. And then suddenly Ilhan Omar's hyperventilating like the Constitution just called her bluff. In their upside-down world, enforcing the law is fascism, but raiding a Catholic charity for voting Republican, well, that's justice. So buckle up, folks, because this segment's a guided tour through the party of panic where clown cars pass legislation, outrage is on tap, and the only thing getting deported is common sense.
This district is home to one of the youngest constituents in the country because it includes so many higher institutions, including the University of Minnesota. This bill tells them you are on your own. And for what? To hand over $150 billion to immigration enforcement, $45 billion for ICE detentions, more than 13 times their current budget. We're already seeing reports of new detention centers like the alligator Alcatraz being built in Florida.
It's all so tired and old. We've heard this kind of rhetoric for years at this point, so you'd think Democrats would have changed the side of the tape by now, but they're clearly stuck in a loop of hysteria and bad faith. And this is a clear example of it. Ilhan Omar's latest meltdown over ICE funding isn't just more political theater, it's a window into how completely untethered the Democrat Party has become from the basic concept of national sovereignty. Her speech, packed with melodrama about alligator Alcatraz detention centers and the supposed abandonment of college students, isn't meant to inform, it's designed to inflame. And that's the tell. Beneath the panic is a party that rebranded moral relativism and perpetual grievance, Marxist grievance, into their political identity. In their worldview, any assertion of national interest is instantly labeled fascism, unless, of course, it's being used to target their enemies, the right. They fight to dismantle immigration enforcement at every turn, then act shocked when the resulting chaos spills into their own backyard. What Omar's tantrum really exposes is a deep discomfort with the very idea of a functioning state. It's a third world authoritarian view of government, wherein elected leaders assume that unless the government can be weaponized for ideological control, it shouldn't even exist in the first place. That's why Democrats never debate. They only emote. At this point, this party isn't even about governing anymore. It's just about going through the political terrible twos, screaming at the sky because someone said no. And since we're on the topic of terrible, Jasmine Crockett.
So anyway, I just wanted to jump on because my heart is truly heavy for all of these families. The sad part is, I think that my heart is going to carry a level of weight that will continue to weigh me down as we have to continue to do our best to survive an administration that literally is against us. An administration that is doing everything, in my mind, to hurt us and not help us. And it feels like we're fending for ourselves.
This chick understands that she doesn't have to issue a face cam public statement about everything, right? Especially when she somehow manages to make every crisis about herself. Crockett was elected to legislate, not to live stream emotional monologues about how much a flood is personally weighing on her heart. But this is the modern Democrat politician, folks, trained more in performance than policy, fluent in victimhood, and pathologically allergic to any sort of accountability. When natural disasters hit, the instinct should be to mobilize resources and inform the public, not posture as the primary victim while blaming an administration that, last time I checked, actually stepped in to offer assistance with this natural disaster. Now, what Crockett's video reveals is a large cultural rot, the rise of therapeutic governance, where the emotional expression of politicians substitutes any sort of action, and where deflection replaces any sort of leadership. It's no accident that this kind of framing thrives on social media. It's performative, and people love to watch some good old political theater, especially when it's calibrated for clicks, not actual legislative results. And it shows just how deeply the left's obsession with identity and narrative has eroded even the most basic expectations of public service. Because remember, folks, politicians are supposedly public servants. They're elected into office to represent you, not to grow their social media following, where they can have emotional outbursts for your entertainment. Anyway, speaking of grievance politics, Big Mike is back to complaining. Because what else is she supposed to do on her podcast?
Women, we have so many landmines and barriers and don'ts and limitations. It's, I mean, Craig, you're the guy at the table, but I think it's important for all guys listening, especially men raising daughters, to realize that difference. And that thing that inadvertently, as you are loving and raising these beautiful girls, there are so many rules that make us small.
Baked in without our knowing it,
Yeah.
And I wish I could, I remember people saying, oh, well, she's a female doctor, as opposed to just, she's a doctor.
Big Mike is such a victim, folks. You have absolutely no idea. And by the way, you should also make note that being a female human like Julia Louis-Dreyfus, whose net worth is $250 million, is just so unbelievably hard. What is she even supposed to do with those tens of hundreds of millions of dollars? And Michelle Obama, also worth just a modest $75 million after her years of oppression in Ivy League schools, the White House, and Netflix deals. They all want you to know they're barely surviving these baked-in barriers of being a woman in America. Now, folks, all sarcasm aside, what we're watching isn't just tone-deaf elitism. It's the final form of a cultural grift that monetizes victimhood while hoarding power. These women aren't speaking truth to power. They are the power, cloaking themselves in Marxist grievance to avoid any sort of accountability. The fact that they're still peddling the myth of systemic female disempowerment in the most privileged spaces imaginable shows how deeply the left has embedded identity politics into the public psyche. The goal isn't equality anymore. It's perpetual leverage, a world where success never disqualifies you from claiming oppression and where reality must be reshaped to accommodate elite feelings over objective reality. And the objective reality of the situation, folks, is that these women inhabit the stratosphere of what it means to be the 1% in the wealthiest nation in the world. And speaking of being out of touch, Democrat politicians out here in California, it can't get any worse.
The city of Paris has received reports of ongoing ICE operations within the area. We urge all residents to remain calm, stay indoors when possible, and know your rights. Do not go out unless necessary. Stay at home and do not open the door to strangers. This message is for awareness and safety. The city is committed to protecting the dignity and well-being of all our residents.
Is it?
Please stay safe and continue to monitor official city communications.
What an absolute clown show. That was the mayor of Paris, California, who issued what amounts to a neighborhood shelter-in-place alert, not for a natural disaster, not for a violent criminal on the loose, but because ICE, federal authorities, are reportedly enforcing immigration law. Let that sink in, folks. We've reached a point where upholding federal law is treated like a threat to public safety, while the actual law breaking that necessitates ICE's presence is conveniently treated like a virtuous action. This isn't about community protection, if it hasn't been clear so far. It's about political posturing. It's the result of years of conditioning from the left, where illegal immigration is framed as a civil right and law enforcement is cast as the villain. Local officials now feel empowered, even obligated, to treat federal agents as hostile invaders, not partners in public safety. This mindset didn't arise in a vacuum. It was cultivated by progressive media, sanctuary city policies, and activist groups that have blurred the line between compassion and complicity. And what it reveals is a deep rot in civic leadership, a willingness to undermine the rule of law in order to signal ideological purity. Folks, at the end of the day, these people have got to go. We got to fire them. We got to vote these motherfuckers out. I don't know how to put it more bluntly. Get them out. They don't stand for you. They don't stand for your tax dollars. They don't represent the citizens of this country. Get them out. And unfortunately, as we've seen in the last few weeks, the low IQ doesn't stop at Paris. We've got that running rampant here out in Los Angeles, where our mayor, Karen Bass, is just filing frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit, trying to subjugate the authority of the federal government to her will, which nobody voted her to do any of this sort of stuff, to waste our taxpayer dollars. How about you just cut our taxes, cut the bureaucracy, like make the city livable, take care of the homeless situation, perhaps, ensure that our city isn't going to just blow up on fire in 2 months, or at least try to help out the folks out in the Palisades. I heard that they're having a hard time building their homes after you were, skipping town and allowed that entire neighborhood to burn down. How about you do some of that instead of standing up for people who aren't even citizens? Clearly, I have a lot to say in this issue, folks. I haven't even let the clip play yet, and I'm already ranting. This lady boils my blood.
I just finished signing an executive directive, which essentially puts all city departments and city leadership on notice to protect Angelenos, essentially from the federal government. Just think about that for a minute. We want to make sure that our city departments are prepared in case ICE shows up at their door. How are they to respond? We want to make sure, of course, that they abide by the law, but we want them to know their rights, which means that ICE can't come barreling into the library just randomly looking for people. They have to have a specific warrant, and if they don't, then they can't come in. We also are filing a Freedom of Information Act because we want to know, who are these masked men and why are they masked in the first place? Why can't they show identification? Why are they driving in unmarked cars with tinted windows and no license plate? Why do they jump out of the cars armed? And why are they snatching people off the street? All of this needs to stop. But I just want to end with this. How ironic is it that I signed an executive directive to protect Angelenos from our federal government?
Because you're a retard who doesn't understand federalism, or maybe you do and you're just banking on the public being too uninformed to notice. Let's be clear. In the United States, federal law supersedes state and local law, period. That's not a talking point. It's a supremacy clause of the Constitution. So when the mayor of Los Angeles signs an executive directive to protect citizens from the federal government, she's not leading, she's LARPing. LA doesn't get to veto federal immigration law because it feels righteous on Instagram. Cities are not sovereign entities. They're subsidiaries of the state, and the state itself is subject to federal law. What we're watching is a logical endpoint of years of Marxist sanctuary city propaganda, where local officials confuse public tantrums with legal authority and treat enforcement of federal law as a human rights violation. They manufacture fear with phrases like masked men in unmarked cars, hoping you won't realize these masked men are federal agents operating under full constitutional authority. This moment isn't just a civics failure, it's a cultural one. The left has spent decades eroding the public's understanding of law, sovereignty, and citizenship, replacing it with a cartoon version of justice where feelings override facts and local politicians get to cosplay as resistance heroes. But the Constitution doesn't bend for blue cities in meltdown mode, and no amount of emotional theater from Bass is going to change any of that, ever.
Angelenos, today we had an important victory at the court. So now there will be a restraining order. They won't just be able to drive through the streets and snatch people off the streets. We know that all of this has been about creating a sense of fear and terror in our community, but I'm hoping that this ruling will give people a sense of peace, that maybe they can leave home now, maybe they can go back to work, maybe they don't have to live in so much fear. We have to use every possible strategy available to us. Today it was a victory in the courts. I know it will be challenged, but still, we won today and we have to keep up the fight.
Literally nobody asked for this outside of the unhinged blue-haired activists firebombing ICE vehicles and staging hunger strikes in front of the DHS building downtown. Deporting all illegal immigrants is now a 60-40 issue in America, and the momentum is only moving further towards full enforcement of the law. But once again, Democrats couldn't care less about public will. They just ran to a friendly activist judge, Mommy Frimpong, to kneecap federal law enforcement and score a virtue signal. This is exactly what Democrats love to do. They lose at the ballot box, so they flood the courts and legislate from the bench. Judge Frimpong's order isn't some heroic defense of civil rights. It's a blatant attempt to handcuff a federal agency and block immigration enforcement under the guise of protecting due process. Nobody's defending race-based stops here. What's at stake is whether federal officers can do their job without political sabotage masquerading as legal precedent. And while the corporate press rushes to paint this ruling as a win for constitutional values, the Constitution is exactly what's being twisted here. Under Article 6, federal law is supreme, and immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility. Now, the Trump administration obviously responded. They said this judge has no authority to dictate immigration policy, and they're right. This will likely get overturned the second is challenged. But in the meantime, the ruling exposes exactly how the left weaponizes the judiciary to block the enforcement of laws they don't like, while pretending the public isn't watching. But the public is watching. And guess what? We've had enough. And stay with me, folks. It gets better because, of course, it does. You see, our great mayor, Karen Bass, also announced yesterday that she will provide cash assistance to illegal aliens. That's right. While our city faces a nearly $1 billion budget deficit, Bass is now handing out prepaid debit cards to illegals supposedly affected by these ICE raids. Not people proven innocent, by the way. Not legal residents. Who would ever want to help them? Just whoever violated federal law to be in the country in the first place. Now, to put this into context, there are nearly 1 million illegal aliens in Los Angeles County, roughly 10% of our population. And now, our great leadership is unironically offering financial rewards to those folks who broke federal law to be here in the first place. This isn't policy, by the way. It's a pure ideological stunt. It's the left's worldview in action. Lawbreakers are always the oppressed. Now, I also think it goes without saying that in a time when ICE is rescuing trafficked minors from cannabis farms and dismantling criminal networks, it's kind of crazy that Bass is more concerned with shielding the perpetrators than helping the victims. This isn't compassion, by the way. It's just straight up sabotage of everything we hold near and dear. Anyway, folks, over at The View, Whoopi went full Whoopi, and as we all know, you never go full Whoopi, unless your last name is Cushion. In that case, you're always ready for some pushing. I know, folks, I just couldn't help myself with that wordplay. I'm just happy to be here.
All of you. He's talking about you, it's us. He's not going to say, oh, you're with a white guy, I'm going to keep you from being deported. No, he's going to deport you and put the white guy with someone else. The man is out there.
Why is it that every time The View opens its mouth, it sounds like a political seance for people possessed by MSDNC? Whoopi Goldberg just claimed with a straight face that Donald Trump wants to deport anyone who isn't white and reassign their white partners to someone else. This isn't commentary, by the way. It's racial paranoia masquerading as insight. Just think if Whoopi were white and saying the same thing about the opposite race. She would 100% be called a racialist, a white supremacist, and yet this is all treated as normal daytime TV. What we're seeing here is the end stage effect of narrative addiction, where facts no longer matter and the only requirement for airtime now is how creatively you can repackage 2025 America into 1930s Germany. These kinds of delusions don't just disinform, they deepen the cultural fracture. They teach viewers, especially younger ones, to see the world not for what it is, but as a constant civil rights emergency orchestrated by invisible white supremacists. The result, a political class more loyal to fantasy than to actual objective truth, and a public discourse dominated by fear, projection, and bad faith hysteria. So the question isn't just whether these people believe what they're saying, it's why so many are willing to nod along as if it's sane. How do we reach a point where delusion is rewarded, where emotion outranks evidence, and where truth is treated as violence while lies are sold as some kind of virtue? You've seen these tactics before, by the way. None of this is new to you. Moral panic, weaponized empathy, and endless appeals to fear. But have you asked yourself, who benefits from the confusion that they stir? Who gains when the public is too distracted or divided to demand any sort of accountability? If we don't start recognizing the machinery behind these sorts of narratives, the media scaffolding, the ideological conditioning, the calculated emotional manipulation, the Leninist playbook will just unfold in ways that we won't even see coming. We'll lose all capacity to see through the BS. And at that point, we're not just being lied to. We're caught up in the middle of a revolution we never even saw coming in the first place because we bought into the lie. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.